because no one wins. Nobody wins. And if you know that, then the smartest thing to do is to avoid the fight at all costs, because when you engage, especially with somebody like Trump or anybody who's like them, they're instigating for you to get into a fight because they already have a nothing to lose mentality, and they just want to pull you into the suck. And then when you do, you lose. And
Yeah.
that's it. So that's, I mean, that's how I see it. I see it that everybody is so on pins and needles and eggshells, and they're afraid on how much blood, sweat, and tears are going to be sucked out of their life to engage in the fight, to where they've done the math and go, it's not worth getting in the fight. Let's just ride this
Well, the thing
out.
is, all of those people, Trump and his, adherents are all cowards. They're all a bunch of fearful cowards, and they want to spin all these conspiracy theories that
Yeah, but
have no credibility
I
whatsoever.
don't know if they're a coward, Steve. I
They
think
are cowards.
I
They're complete cowards. You confront these people and they go away. They hide behind their computers. They hide behind
yes,
their
some are.
simulations.
Some are, but a lot of them aren't. You can't lump them all into the coward basket. You can't do it because they aren't. There are fighters out there that realize that if they get in a fight, everything that they have, families, properties, lives, everything will be lost. For what? For what? To show that you're not a coward? That's not smart. That's not smart. Just because you are capable of restraining yourself from a fight doesn't make you a coward. Now, yes, there are cowards, and they do
Well, I'm
run.
not talking about people with restraint. I'm talking about people who are who just are, feel like they have to attack
Those
other
are
people in order to have some sense of self because they really don't know where the fuck they fit in this society. So they have to lash out. They have to find somebody to blame for why their lives don't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that, and that's
by
those are
the
the
way,
people that's causing the most trouble.
I've had Trumplets want to fight me just by criticizing him.
Yeah, fuck them.
And so it is what it is, and eventually they run away. But they just it's they've invested so much emotional capital in the most complete asshole that's probably ever run for president. I mean, he's worse than Wallace because
Yeah,
he's
he
not.
is. He has less dignity than George Wallace.
Yeah.
Well, let's not
Which is
spend our whole time talking about that knucklehead, which we already know. Let's talk about something more provocative and something more, more interesting. We all, we already know.
well, what's the agenda here?
It's your show. The agenda is you. So we want to talk about things that are on your mind. What you want to talk about. What you got going. What like
Well, I thought we were gonna lay the groundwork for, these Reuben Carter tapes.
Um, we are. That's a call between you and I. This is a live podcast with Herb on the air that I talked to you about wanting to do a podcast with you, and we're going to talk about Herb and Carter and what we want to do with that. Like we can do that after
Well,
this.
what's on my mind is definitely, all the different stuff going down in the rallies, the protests, the sense that, what shocks me. I mean, the killing of George Floyd was shocking. It was shocking to see that out in the open. But I have to say that there have been so many George Floyds that I've personally been aware of, and nobody's reacted. I mean, he's, uh, not just in a long line of victims' names that have become familiar from Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice and whomever, but it is systemized racism. It is systematic racism, and that's what this country was built on, and that's what regained its its power under Trump. And there was something that Chris Hayes said in his broadcast yesterday when asked to explain uh, how we got here, and he said, well, there's 3 years of Trump pumping toxins into the democratic process and basically poisoning the well. And I think that's a lot of what has suddenly people seem to suddenly be aware of how poisoned everything is by this racist dialogue that he has made permissible, that he has allowed people to go in public and declare themselves adherents for, and he's given that permission. But that stuff was around before, and it was just as awful and ugly, and the ugliness has been there since I've been aware. And everything I read is that it was there long before.
So
You know,
if it was
look at
a
movies. You look at movies from the 1940s. There's not a black person in them. I mean, you look at the streets of New York. They're all white. I mean, how did that happen? You know, it's not that black people didn't exist. It's not that people of color, black and brown people, weren't around. I saw them, on the streets in the 60s. But you look at the 40s and the 50s, that so-called time of America's greatness, and there's none. There's nobody. There's nobody. I mean, eventually, like Sidney Poitier, sneaks into the picture, and he's the first black, movie star to
or Harry,
to really be a crossover star.
or Harry Belafonte. He was in some movies early,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and Paul Robeson was another.
Well, Paul Robeson predated all
Yeah,
of
he was.
them,
Yeah,
but
but he was a
Paul Robeson was not really a crossover star.
no, he was what he was, and
Yeah,
as for the movies, what was happening? They were segregated. I've got uh,
yeah,
I've got lots of early black cinema. I just, I had this idea with Kimbrough, that last February we were going to do a film festival, and I found this. You could buy this stuff for next to nothing, so I got a pile of it. And I've got
mm,
it all, all of it re-encoded and on a hard drive ready to go. Plus the Library of Congress set and the Southern Methodist University set, and then of course here comes the play again. The feces hits the fan, and that's the end of that. So sometime at the end of summer maybe. But
well, you look at a movie. You look at a movie, even like the Marx Brothers' Day at the Races,
yeah,
which
no,
is a very enjoyable movie. But 2/3 of the way through, there's this All God's Children, jamboree,
yeah,
in which black people come on, dressed in, Aunt Jemima and Uncle Tom, uh, full regalia there, and sing just the most horrifyingly demeaning and degrading uh, song, in which it doesn't just make you cringe, it makes you sick to your stomach, because this was entertainment. This
yeah,
was considered mainstream entertainment, and not just permissible, but you know I mean, I think, and they, the Marx Brothers were from a left wing, Jewish background, but this is the studio. Studio tells you what to do. That's what you do. You don't get your movie made otherwise.
there was also separate Jewish cinema, a lot of it in
Yeah,
Yiddish.
right, right.
And I've
Uh,
got a
It,
copy of Der Golem.
it's when you look at the at the arc of things, yeah, I was thinking the other night, and Herb could probably speak to this too, because we were both alive in 1968 and aware of what was going on. I'm sure you were too. In 1968, I was 15, and I was demonstrating against the war, and also, I worked for uh, the country of Biafra, which was under siege from Nigeria, and against South Africa, and all these things that were going on that nice liberal kids joined in then the same way nice liberal kids are joining in now, except we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phone, we didn't have any way to communicate with each other. We didn't even have fucking walkie talkies. I mean, that was military. That was not on the streets. Like,
In,
we had no way of syncing up our activities.
in
Um,
'68, I was already in the Navy, so ended
yeah,
up
well,
in
you're even older than me. You're one of the few. but I came up when I was 18 in the 70s. I came up, for the draft in the last year where there was, the number lottery, and I could potentially have been drafted, but my number was very high, so I was never in any danger.
I,
Um,
I was before they had the lottery, and what happened was I lived in Tahunga, and basically poor white Catholic, even though I don't look the part, and what was going on was it was Glendale, that Glendale Burbank draft board, who were very corrupt, and so what they were doing was they were pulling their entire quota from you know poor Hispanics in Sun Valley, poor blacks from Pacoima, poor whites from Sunland, Tahunga, and then Glendale and La Crescenta and all that, all of it east of Lowell Avenue and all down through Glendale and into Burbank. They were, they were all, they were really cool about doing deferments, and then they were just drafting everybody. What happened to me is I got a draft notice and had to go get the physical. So I went straight and joined. After the physical, I joined the Navy. And so I was in, August the 16th, I got on the bus and was gone to San Diego in boot camp. In September, they showed up at my stepmother and dad's house, and they were looking for Herbert Morris, this draft dodger. And so my stepmother was there. She hated the FBI. She was Native American, and so her line was, "Oh, I've never bore no kid named Herbert." And she
uh,
just gave them a big ration of shit. And as far as I know, they're still looking for me.
well,
that's a great story, Herb. I never heard that before.
yeah. Steve, you grew up in New York City also, right?
No, I grew up in Chicago, but I moved out to New York once I was an adult after my divorce, and I spent 15 years in New York, all through the
When
90s.
did you move there?
I moved there in '93, and I was there
Oh wow, you
until
okay? I thought you were
2000.
there earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
no,
I grew up in the heart of New York City. In definitely a privileged white high-rise apartment building.
I know it well. I lived on Third and 63rd, so
Yeah,
that's
well,
a
I lived
very
across the park from you. I lived on 63rd and Central Park West.
yeah
I mean, you know, you don't get more
affluent than that.
elitist.
Yeah,
You don't get more elitist
yeah, I know.
than
I've been there.
than
I've
that shit.
I've
But
dated some women on all over New York that had some stupid money. Like I've dated millionaires.
well,
Yeah.
I'm not. It's again. that's what my background is so weird because my parents are well to do and they would have parties in which my mom's a politician, and so she would uh, have parties for like Mondale and um, uh, uh, Clinton, not Hillary, but I guess she had some Hillary parties, but I wasn't around. I wasn't, I didn't go to any of those. But
I met
you know,
Hillary. I
I
met
was
Hillary.
long. Yeah, I didn't really. Yeah, but it's she's a big supporter of the liberal Democratic Party. But I was always aware. I mean, as elitist as where I grew up was, like 2 blocks away, uh, was where there were tenement buildings, which when I was a kid they obliterated like almost all these tenement buildings and put up Lincoln Center. I mean, before Lincoln Center was there, it was all um, like black and Puerto Rican families in tenement buildings. And I went to the YMCA was across the street from me, so I would go to the YMCA on Saturdays, and it was like I was like the only white kid in the group. It was like all black and Puerto Rican kids, and it was you when you're a kid you become very aware of these inequities, and I didn't like representing the money class.
Why not?
You know
I would have represented the money class, no problem.
you think so, but actually when you're there representing the money class, you feel like a target.
Dude, we
It's
didn't
like
have
I don't
we
have any
we
money.
didn't have money, we didn't have wealth, we didn't have status, we didn't have elite, and we still were targets. What's the difference? There is no difference. Like if you're a target, you're a target, and it's
Well,
not.
yeah, I'm
It's
I'm not talking about a target in the way you're talking about a target, though. I mean, I was I was a representative of white privilege, which I did not particularly, I did not get along that well with my family,
I was a
and
representative
then
of
it
black no
exploded.
privilege,
It
and
exploded in the '60s. I mean, I've just never really had personal money. I've always lived on the edge of poverty, but at the same point, I I have access to money if I'm like going under. Uh,
you got a safety net.
I have a safety net, and other people don't, and that's a huge thing. It's a huge difference, and I'm very aware of that, and I don't take it for granted, and I try not to make use of it. But just knowing it's there is a comfort that other people don't have, and I certainly have enough imagination to understand what that's like,
But
and I
don't you think having that allowed you to take, being the boot heel in
yes.
most of those situations because it's like, all
Yes.
right, you know what? I understand your situation. You're frustrated. You got the angst. I'm the person with the priv. Okay, go ahead, take your shots, say your thing, do your thing. But at least I know, I'm comfortable. I'll be okay. Doesn't that like take the
Yes.
sting out of that harassment a little bit? That profiling, that targeting.
Without a doubt. I mean, I took money jobs all through the 80s and 90s in New York. Um, and but the money jobs I had were like I did that was when you could make a lot of money doing word processing as a temp word processor in
Mm-hmm.
offices,
Mm-hmm.
because I did not, I wrote for the New York Times, I wrote for the Village Voice, I wrote for all these people, but that doesn't make shit. I mean, in terms of money. You
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's horrifying how little they pay you, and they complain about paying you the little bit they do. So I mean, I had one year where I sold 30 articles. I had 30 articles appear in print in different publications, and I made like $6,000 off of them. I mean, it was ridiculous. Even in the, even in those days, you couldn't pay your bills off of that. So I had these, I did proofreading for legal firms, and you could make a lot of money in those days
Yeah, you
doing
could
temp
make
work.
money. I remember I got offered. I was doing comedy. I got offered. Some stockbrokers came into my show and they were like, "Hey, you want to make some really good money? We need people to build PowerPoint presentations for our daily pitches. So we come in the morning and we have our PowerPoints ready to go. They were paying like 45, $50 an hour, and you could go in at like 11 o'clock and work till 8 in the morning at $50 an hour. And I just couldn't do it. Like I didn't have the physical band. Like I wanted to, but
Hmm.
doing the comedy like all night, and then it's like a lot of the shows were like 11, 12, 12:31. I can't
Yeah.
like not do the show and then go make PowerPoints. I moved to New York to be a comedian and to get in these shows that are really hard to get into. And now I'm going to break out to make a PowerPoint presentation for some stockbrokers. It's like, nah, that's not going to happen. But the opportunity was there to make that kind of, like, if I wasn't doing anything else, if I was like personal training during the day and could go work at night, I totally would have done that. If I didn't have anything else going, if I was kind of like floating around, didn't really know what I wanted to do and wanted to make some money, live in New York and be whatever. But because my focus was 100% on being established with comedy, that was the number one priority. So I passed up a lot of money and a lot of office jobs. People would be like, "Hey, you would be great in our office, doing marketing or promotions or sales or whatever, and you'd make, 6 digits a year." I turned down a lot of opportunities, but they weren't the opportunities that I wanted, you know. So,
Mm.
um, but I also took advantage of the opportunities that I did want. Esquire magazine was like, "Hey, we want you to model in our magazine, and we'll pay you." So I was like, "I'll take that."
Yeah,
So,
I would have taken that.
there's the curfew alarm. We are now under curfew. Martial law. Don't go outside or they'll shoot you. Yeah.
Fucking
Welcome to the
ridiculous,
big
man.
suck, Steve.
Yeah. I enjoyed doing temp work during that period because one, I was making like 20 to 25 an hour, which was in a much, when that went a lot further than it does now. And I had a really good rent in New York, uh, which of course is unusual. But I liked going. I liked not having to stay in one place.
Right.
I liked being able to like see the world in one office, and then leave and
Right.
go somewhere else and meet a whole bunch of new people.
Yeah.
Um, and it was I found that interesting and cool, and there was lots of work. Now it's terrible. You can't. I mean, now word processors make $12 an hour in a much worse economy, and I would never do it now. But at that time, there was some logic to doing it. Plus, I didn't have to sell myself as a writer. Like that was uh, my number one commandment was to not do anything that disrespects the art form. I will not do it. My conscience could not live with that. I could not like sell a product that I did not that I thought did not enhance humanity in some way. Um, and most products don't. Most products are just bullshit. Just something that somebody cooked up and then they had an idea of how to sell it, and they had a tagline, and then you go out there and you create a reality in which that thing is like what you have to have in order to feel good about yourself. And I didn't want to do that. And that is because I had a safety net. If I didn't have a safety net, I would have had to take some of that shit. And believe me, my parents like were not they did not subsidize me, um, except as a last resort. I mean, it wasn't like you know I they weren't that rich, and also they're just very much in the Protestant work ethic, way of thinking.
Yeah.
And I have three younger brothers, and they all had, you know, 9 to 5 jobs, and you know, done quite well for themselves at it.
You
I
know,
just never, you know, I was offered, yeah, I would go as a word processor, and they'd offer me a, you know, continuing job, and it'd be like, oh God, no.
I
And
actually liked.
thankfully I'm healthy, so I didn't need the you know, um, the health insurance.
Yeah, I hated work when I was a kid, and I lived with my grandfather, and he made us work like all day, all night. It's borderline child abuse, but not really because it gave me a strong work ethic. It gave me a serious trade in how to do a lot of things. Like if the world shut down completely and went dark, I could survive because I know how to like use the resources in the woods to survive and to eat and to make shelter and all that. And my grandfather was one of these like, bare feet in the dirt, learn how to, you know, yield the soil and work the plants and the trees and build stuff to survive. And he was, very hard working, carpenter, electrician, plumber. Not that he was licensed in all that. He was a licensed carpenter, but because most of the jobs you had to know how to do everything, he was one of those guys, and he just kind of handed that down to me, and I hated it. I hated it. And then one day he was like, you should go inside, pick up the dictionary, and look up what the definition of work is. And I went in, and one of the definitions is a means to measure self worth. And I came out, and he goes, "What did it say?" He says, "A means to measure self worth." I go, "If you want to be," he says, "if you want to be worth anything, then you have to be able to and know how to work and do shit." So the more you learn, the more you can do, the more self worth you have.
Hmm.
From that point on, I saw work completely different. And it didn't matter what I went into, what I did, roofing, plumbing, landscaping, pouring gravel, doing concrete, roofing, sales, even, to this day, it's like, I work hard, and it's like, I have that kind of work ethic that, the more you can do, the more you know how to do, the higher your self worth is, and not only that, but
Hmm.
the higher your market worth is as well, because you can get more money because you can do more things and you have more wisdom, more skills, and that warrants getting more money. So I completely like, and I think how old was I? I think I was like I was starting to. I had my learner's permit. I was 16 because I remember driving his truck around, and I was kind of like the pickup, load, unload a bunch of shit. My dad was the first. My grandfather was the first recycler, and people that were building stuff or tearing things down, he would be like, "Okay, you got to go over, take the truck over, and I need all the bricks, or I need all the salvageable two by fours, or I need all the cinder blocks that aren't broken." And so I'd go there and I would grab all the usable stuff so that he could then build a pony shed for the horses we got or something. And it's you know people aren't like that today. The millennials are nowhere close to that today.
No,
And you came from my
no, though
school.
I
You
have to say
you're like a hardworking dude. Even though you came where you was comfortable, you still like had to do a lot of work, hustle. You kind of learned,
well, I've
the
always
value, the
worked
value
hard
of work.
because nobody in my family believes in me. I mean, you know, even my mom, who, you know, who loves writing and would read things to me when I was growing up, uh, didn't, you know, emotionally support my decision to make that my goal and to kind of, you know, subjugate uh, making money to something, you know, whatever day job I had or whatever that, you know, but not something that I cared about. What I cared about didn't make money, and so it's like they just. So I'm constantly trying to make it clear that this is, you know, the path I've taken is the only path I could have taken and stayed alive. If I took another path, I would have gotten so depressed I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah. Well, you found it early, and then you were able to make that your thing. Your self worth. And a lot of people, Steve, they're in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they still haven't found that. And when you come to the realization that you feel your life was wasted because you didn't find the thing, that's when people are super miserable when they're like older,
Yeah,
super
it's really
cranky and
true.
evil. Like they're super evil. It's like, why are you so evil? You're so old. You should be basking in the fact that you live so long and you've accomplished. But the reality of you missed your thing, your window, your chance. And first of all, you missed figuring out what it was to even jump on it. And that's even a bigger frustration. It's like you didn't throw enough spaghetti on the wall to see what it is that you did like, and then pursue that for 30 years. And it's really a
Well,
sad
I had
thing.
I had the weird situation of when I got out of I well I when I graduated college, um, I immediately got a job writing for the Village Voice as a features writer. Literally, like the day after I graduated college, I started that job. Um, and and then I went from that. I wrote for a bunch of other publications as well, and then I got a 2-year grant to a federal writing grant, and that paid me enough to live on, and gave me 100% medical coverage.
Wow.
I'm talking about 100%.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I was,
You were
24
healthy.
years
Yeah.
old,
You
so
didn't need any of it. You didn't even need a
I
band-aid.
got like free teeth cleaning. That's about as much as I remember benefiting from that. But it just seemed like it was gonna all just, and I would go out and see, my name on the cover of magazines, having written things, and most people don't really see bylines, but I did, and my friends saw it, and so it just seemed to be like, like I felt like I was gonna have a career, and then Reagan came in and he pulled the plug on everything
Yeah.
that,
Reagan, that evil
all the
bastard.
people who wanted to work with me, all of a sudden they were out of work, and all of a sudden my grant was like the pipeline was shut off 6 months before it was supposed to be over. So the time I was going to spend like trying to find something else to transition into, that was gone.
Wow.
And it's like, all of a sudden everybody was an entrepreneur,
Right.
and they were all trying to find the like the gimmick that they could use to sell themselves, and that was like and antithetic to everything that I lived by. I didn't want to be part of a gimmick. I was searching for authenticity. That was always what I was searching for. And it's, it's all it's what I found, but there's nobody pays you for finding authenticity. It's like there's when you get to that point where you understand your place in this universe, or your place in this society, um, and how the society works. There's nobody there with a large amount of money,
Well,
and they don't hand it to you.
well, half the re-
Congratulations
half the
on
reason they don't want to
finding
pay
what
you.
bullshit most of this society
Yeah,
is.
half the reason they don't want to pay you is because they're jealous that you found your thing, and to
Yeah,
pay you is a confirmation of your bliss, and they
it's
don't
true.
want you to experience bliss because they're still in the suck. So, and they're the ones
Yeah.
who you got to work for, and they're the ones who have to pay you. And so they're like, this asshole found his thing. He's happy. I'm not gonna pay him what he's worth, because why should he have his cake and eat it too? You know?
It's so true. That really hurt me. Like I always thought I was gonna teach, and I had a few jobs teaching college, for a semester here, a semester there, and going into schools as kind of one of those, artist in the school program things. But people always were like, "You're not suffering enough. We're not going to help you. You don't
Dude,
look unhappy enough. Look
even
at this person over there. They're so unhappy."
even when you are suffering, they still don't want to pay you, bro. As a matter of fact, they see you suffering, they want to pile on. It's called the big pile on.
That's true too. That's true too.
Yeah.
Well, that's the worst. You can't ever get an agent when you need one.
Right?
The only
Yeah.
time I've gotten agents come to me is when I have a need, when I already had an agent,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's a terrible situation for the independent
Yeah.
voice out there. There's
Well, I got it.
nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the comedy convention, which was produced by Bud Freeman back in the '80s,
Sure.
in the early '80s, and all the big agents were going for all the big stars, and Bud Freeman was pushing all the big agencies for all of his hand-picked headliner guys, and the rest of us was just kind of the fringe who weren't in the shows and on the showcases. That so we would set up these little showcases at these lounges around Vegas just to, just to be a part or showcase or whatever, hoping that maybe people from the convention would roll over into some of these fringe shows. And you had a bunch of manager and agent wannabes. They weren't the big, Morris, and they weren't the big, CAC or whatever. These were people who were like looking for people who they thought was funny enough and marketable enough and good enough that they could make money on, but they weren't in the big game. They weren't on the major playing fields. And I found a wannabe manager who scooped me up at one of these little fringe lounges that my friend put me on. And she's like, you're funny and you're good enough to like work the cruises. Have you ever been on a cruise? And I was like, no, I haven't. Do you have, an hour? Is it clean? Do you have a passport? And it just so happens that I had all that because I was working a lot of like colleges in the Midwest and a lot of corporate gigs where you had to be clean. And she goes, I'll call you tomorrow and I'll let you know when you're going. And she called me the next day and says, I've got you booked. I got a plane ticket for you to fly to Miami and get on a cruise ship in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And you're going to do like a trial. And if you do well, then you can work as many cruises as you want. And it was back then, it's 2,500 a week, which to me was like $1 million fucking. And that's how I got a manager. And then from that manager, I was able to get other agents, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So I think Steve, you need to find one of those wannabe agents if you don't have one already. Do you have
When
an
I was
agent
in New
now?
York, I had so many agents and managers, and nobody ever did shit for me. I mean, whenever I sold myself, and then they took their 15%.
Yeah,
I have nothing good to say about any of my experiences with agents or managers. They're so narrowly focused, uh, and they really
they don't want to
do all
work.
those things.
They want you to walk through
Like,
the door already being a bestseller, and then they can get a piece of it.
hmm?
They want you to walk through the door already being a bestseller, and then they just want a
Yeah,
piece of that.
yeah. They want to jump on your train. They don't want you to jump on their train. They want you to be the money train, and they jump on it. You know, and like, yeah, I'm here on the money train, man. It's like,
Oh man.
yeah. I mean, it was a real wake up to me, because I had a job in the late '80s as a literary manager at a theater, and I dealt with agents and managers all the time. And when I actually got to know them, it very much demystified the whole thing. It was also incredibly depressing, because again, I can't say that I ran into one of them who impressed me as a person acting. I mean, there were a few older people who acted out of passion, and there are a few agents, stragglers, who still have some passion for the work. But man, it's deteriorated. Even like from when I knew it, it was sad. But now it's like ridiculous, ridiculous.
Do you
And
feel that you have reached a place where you feel established as being authentic, and are you still thirsty, or are you
well, I'm
what?
thirsty for recognition, yeah, because I know I'm better than I don't know anybody honestly who can do what I do. There just aren't. There's nobody who can write in. I've had 12 books published. I've had books, books of poetry published. I had novel published. I had memoirs published. I've had plays published. Uh, I've had commentary published, criticism. I mean, it's there is nobody who can hit all the notes I can hit. But it's like I'm not going to go out there and like toot my own horn. I don't. That doesn't mean anything to me. I like to do the work. I don't like to go out there and you know, and then if I go out there again, I'm looked at as some white guy who's had some privilege that got him everything he ever wanted, and that's just not the case. And I don't feel like arguing with people about how I've had a struggle too. It's not interesting to me. I don't want to convince anybody of anything. I'm not trying to cry on anybody's shoulder. At a certain point, I saw if I was going to continue, it was just going to be because I refused to give up, not because anybody was going to miss me if I was gone.
Do you think that maybe a better strategy? I don't know if you tried it and it didn't work, or you didn't try it at all. But do you think maybe a strategy, not better or worse, but a strategy for you would be more to retain a PR person or a PR company that could brand you and your accolades versus having a
I never
manager?
had I never had enough money to pay anybody that kind of money. And I did that once or twice when I had a book come out. I hired a PR person and they never did shit for me. And it was a sad. It was always like, oh well, nobody knows your name, and I'm going to all these places and doors aren't opening. And that's like, welcome to my life.
Well, I mean, you need a PR person that looks at you like a new product that they have to create a brand for and create a buzz for and create a reality for. It's not like, I mean, you have to make it you have to take, nothing, not that you're a nothing, but like a non-exposed thing, and then manufacture a reality around it. That's what PR people are supposed to do. Like publicity stunts are those things. Like they didn't come up with any publicity stunts for you to save a baby in a building, and it's all was staged. And then there you are on NBC. And by the way, I wrote a book on saving babies or whatever.
I could look back now and think of all the PR women who came on to me who I didn't sleep with. That's about
Oh,
all
dude, come on, man. Now, you know what? I'll give you a pass on all that other white privilege and then, having to work and struggle. But you passing on the honeys that passed on you that
Well,
were being PR,
I was married for quite
that a marriage that didn't work out, and you
my
didn't, like, dude. You
it's
see,
even
you
if it
had me.
doesn't work
I
out.
almost was starting to play my violin for your ass, man. You almost had me. You had me at I was experiencing white privilege struggle, and people don't know my pain, man. I was all in.
The
And
thing is, you're a performer, man. I'm not a performer.
you
I'm
are
a
a
writer.
performer.
It's
You're
different.
writing.
It's a
You're
different.
you're
It's a different
writing.
mentality.
Yeah, but you know
I
what?
have been an actor. I know what it is to be an actor.
Yes,
I
but
enjoy being an actor.
but
I
writing.
couldn't live. I couldn't live with that kind of uncertainty of what was going to happen day to day.
But you were in that
I didn't
anyway.
enjoy that.
You're in that anyway, so you got nothing to lose, really. You're in uncertainty, so you might as well roll with some uncertainty that you don't know what's certain because it's uncertain. It's like, it's like you got nothing to
Well, I
lose.
experienced. But
You
Steve, I
got more to
experienced the other
lose.
side of
You
that.
got more to lose
When
passing on it than you do actually like taking advantage of it. And you got more to gain to take advantage of it than what you have to lose by not taking advantage of it.
when my marriage broke up, I was 40 years old, and I experienced, you know, I said yes to all those offers
And
that
they
were
said,
out
"Go
there,
fuck
and all
yourself.
the
You missed your
offers.
window, right?"
No, I didn't miss any window. but in accepting the window, it's so it gets. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complications.
Of course, it's
It all
complicated.
sounds good. It all
Yeah,
sounds good.
it's
Um,
complicated with, it's complicated without. You just have to measure the lesser of the two evils. And if you're trying to sell a book, sometimes you might want to pick the lesser evil that might get your book across the finish line because it's all complicated. It all sucks. And it is what it is. But,
well, I don't know what there is about me, but whatever there is, it makes it obvious when I'm there because I like the person or when I'm there because I want something from them. Because when I try to do things for the reasons that you just said, I get called on it. And
well, no,
I
it's
got
not.
women,
It's not like,
looking me in the eye and saying,
no, it's
are
not.
you, you
It,
really just here because you want something, right?
No,
And
it's not like you put the proposition on the table. These are women who are in positions of
I
power
know,
that hit on you. The dynamic of that is completely different than what you just described. If they're coming on to you and they have the power to launch your book, you're basically surfing the Maverick at this point. It's not like, yeah, can you crash and burn and bust a spleen? Of
I
course
know,
you
but
can.
well,
And of course it's risky.
first of
It's a
all, I was,
Maverick.
most of the women were already married, and they when they came on to me.
Well,
So
yeah.
then,
Of course,
again, then
because
I become.
no single woman's gonna come on to you. Come on, you ain't got that kind of Mac.
uh,
I'm busting your balls. I'm sure you did fine when you were young. You were one of them young, rich, pretty
I did
boys.
do
I'm
fine.
sure you
I
was
did do
knocking them single
fine.
girls down. They was hoping they was marrying a trust fund, and you leveraged it. I know. I know how you got down when you was young. You leveraged it. You're like, you know who my mom is? I knew you did. Come on, meet me in the back of the car. Let me show you something.
No,
Let
that
me
was
show you my.
embarrassing. My mom was fucking deputy mayor of New York City. You would think that would be a, you would think that would be a great, it was not.
Dude,
I did not enjoy that in the least.
that's power. There's a lot of young women who don't want to go to college, who don't want to. They want to find a guy whose family is like embedded in power, and they want to slide in and be a part of it. And so I know the drill, bro. I know you can downplay it. I know you're downplaying it. It's okay. It's good to be humble in your white privilege struggle. I get it. It's cool.
Most of the women I met were actresses. Most of the women I had any affection for were actresses.
And
Actresses have no power.
that's your kryptonite. That's your weakness. Is go for the actress that can do nothing for you. Nothing. Well, she can do one thing for you, which made you feel good. But you're blushing right